Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. It was late on a Tuesday and I was comfortably 3 drinks deep in what I considered a perfectly unproductive mood. The bar was hushed, dimly lit like a scene from an old film noir, trying a little too hard to be atmospheric and subtly smelling of stale beer and fresh regrets. I was simply minding my own business, a glass of whiskey in my hand, absently scrolling through memes I'd already seen countless times. That's when I noticed him. A solitary figure in a corner booth, fixated on his table. He wasn't drinking or eating. He just seemed to be studying the tabletop with the kind of intense focus usually reserved for tax forms or an ex-wife's Instagram. I attempted to ignore him, but my curiosity, a potent blend of boredom, alcohol, and questionable judgment, eventually got the better of me. So I strolled over, leaning casually against the booth like a nosy cowboy, and spoke up, "Hey there, partner. Are you deep in thought? Or just trying to mentally strong-arm that salt shaker?" He offered no response, not even a blink. The man remained utterly still, gazing downward as if the table owed him money. Naturally, I then performed the polite thing. I sat down uninvited. Now, proper etiquette suggests that if someone plops down next to you unannounced, you either punch them or offer a greeting. This guy did neither. He just kept staring, as if I were a ghost. And frankly, I'd be a terrible specter. I'm far too chatty. I cleared my throat with a dramatic flourish. Still nothing. Just as I was about to quip something clever, like, "Blink twice if you're being haunted," he slowly turned his head. And then he looked directly at me. His eyes were red, watery, and glassy. Not misty from a sad movie, but more like, I'm 6 existential crises deep and completely forgot how chairs work. He finally spoke, his voice so quiet it made public radio sound like heavy metal. "Hello. I'm certainly not a therapist, nor do I play one on TV, but it was abundantly clear that something was weighing heavily on him. Being the considerate idiot I am, I nodded solemnly and remarked, "Well, I'm glad to see your vocal cords are still operational." For a moment, I thought I was conversing with a depressed mannequin. He almost cracked a smile. Almost. Instead, he slowly blinked, his gaze returning to the table, and sighed like someone who had just remembered every single one of their passwords had expired. We sat in silence for a few moments. My gaze was fixed on him, his on the table. I began to ponder what heinous crime the table had committed to warrant such intense scrutiny. Finally, I broke the quiet. "Look, I don't mean to interfere though, obviously. I am. But whatever's going on in your mind seems loud enough to drown out the jukebox. And that thing is currently playing Nickelback, so that's quite an accomplishment." The man sniffled, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, and simply gave a nod. Yes, definitely haunted. So there I was, sitting opposite this living storm cloud I mentally labeled Mr. Gloom. He possessed that particular look in his eyes that screams either, "I've lost absolutely everything," or, "I've been subjected to 6 hours of Hallmark movies against my will." I took another sip of my drink and went for it. "Are you all right?" I asked, knowing perfectly well he wasn't. "I mean, clearly not. You resemble a melancholic jazz tune. But if you feel like offloading your emotional dumpster fire onto a total stranger, I'm ready to listen. I'm Ethan, by the way, local bar patron and occasional life coach." He paused for so long that I genuinely wondered if I'd caused permanent damage. But then, he exhaled a breath that sounded like it had been holding back a whirlwind of emotions. "My name is Sam," he finally managed. Well, the name barrier had been breached. Progress. "I've been married to Laura for 6 years," he continued. "And we have 2 children." I politely nodded, mentally thinking, congratulations. He didn't even flinch, which indicated we were definitely nowhere near the congratulatory phase. Then he delivered the devastating news. "Today, I discovered my wife is cheating on me." "Oh, damn." I grimaced, as if I'd just bitten into a lemon filled with bitter betrayal. "That's truly brutal, man. I'm guessing this wasn't the anniversary present you were hoping for." He shook his head, his eyes again fixed on the table, as if it too had personally betrayed him. "With my next-door neighbor." I slowly blinked. "Your neighbor," I repeated, attempting to sound shocked, though mostly I was just impressed by the sheer cliché of the situation. "Wow, that's incredibly rich. Cheating with the guy whose Wi-Fi you probably freeload off? That's just plain lazy and utterly disrespectful. Whatever happened to the 10 Commandments?" He managed a small, joyless chuckle, as if I just handed him a balloon filled with emotional poison. 6 years, he reiterated, mostly to himself. 6 years of marriage, and she cheats with someone literally within spitting distance of your front porch. I muttered, "Jesus, at least have the decency to outsource the affair to a different zip code. Laura isn't just a cheater, man. She's inefficient." He actually smiled at that. Just barely, but I counted it as a victory. I leaned back, arms crossed. "So what's next? Are you going to set his lawn on fire? Slash her tires?" Devour every tub of ice cream in your freezer and weep in the shower? No judgment from me. He shrugged. I don't know. I just ended up here. Well, welcome, I said, raising my glass. To heartbreak, to whiskey, and to strangers who ask far too many questions. He clinked his water glass against mine. Felt sad. Felt awkward. But hey, misery enjoys company, and I apparently enjoy drama I don't have to pay for. Sam sat there, still swirling in his personal emotional tempest. That's when I decided, what the hell, if we're bonding over trauma tonight, I might as well contribute my own wreckage to the conversation. I cleared my throat and declared, all right, Sam, brace yourself. Let me share a story, because misery is like tequila shots. It goes down much smoother when it's shared and followed by questionable decisions. He looked at me, still teary-eyed, but now with a spark of curiosity. So, about 2 years ago, I too was a married man. I began dramatically, as if narrating my own soap opera episode. And one perfectly ordinary Tuesday, because Betrayal really does have a fondness for weekdays, I discovered my beloved wife was doing the horizontal hokey-pokey with someone who wasn't me. Sam's eyebrows twitched. He was definitely listening now. I continued, now, considering my past, and by past, I mean the me that had serious anger issues, trust issues, and a deep affection for true crime documentaries. I had several options. Oh yeah, I could have pulled a full-on Greek tragedy. Eliminate her. Eliminate the affair partner. Perhaps even end up on a Dateline special titled, He Seemed So Normal. Or hey, I could have performed the dramatic walk into the ocean and made it everyone else's problem. I paused for dramatic effect. Sam stared intently. But I didn't do any of that, I stated, holding up a finger like I was about to give a TED Talk on Emotional Restraint 101. You know what I did? He shook his head. I simply walked away, I declared, shrugging. Didn't scream, didn't throw anything. I packed a duffel bag as if I were going camping in the wilderness of disappointment, and I checked myself into the nearest motel that didn't reek of despair and raccoons. Sam blinked, almost smiling. That night, I went on, I stood before the grimy motel bathroom mirror, gazing at my shirtless reflection, with a vending machine Snickers in one hand and a half-empty root beer in the other, and I thought, what on earth am I actually doing? Sounds difficult? Sam murmured. Difficult. I scoffed. Buddy. The lighting in that bathroom added a solid 10 years to my face. I looked like I was already halfway through my villain origin story. He snorted slightly. Progress. But that's when it truly hit me. I leaned in a little. Somewhere between the sugary pity rush and the existential staring contest with myself, I realized I absolutely refused to be the kind of guy who lets someone else's betrayal dictate the rest of his narrative. I wasn't going to jail, I wasn't going to die, and I was certainly not going to let some cheating spouse be my final chapter. Sam leaned back, slowly nodding. And then, he inquired. And then, I said with a grin, I got a full 8 hours of sleep on a mattress that felt like it was constructed from cinder blocks and ancient secrets. But it was my mattress. No lies, no drama, just back pain and genuine peace. He actually let out a real, heartfelt laugh this time. There we go, I said, raising my drink. Welcome to the club, Sam. Membership is terrible, but at least we've got stories and plenty of sarcasm. Sam's laughter faded, but he continued watching me, as if I might possess a few worthwhile brain cells. And what can I say? I adore an audience, even if it's a man freshly off the emotional guillotine. I swirled the remaining liquid in my glass and leaned back, giving him a grin that promised, you're about to hear some incredibly foolish life choices masquerading as wisdom. You know, Sam, I said, when I was younger, and by younger, I mean foolish with boundless energy, I engaged in all sorts of shady activities. Name it, I've probably done it. Not murder, obviously, because I prefer sleeping in actual beds to prison cots. But yeah, my moral compass didn't so much point north as it just spun like a drunken Roomba. Sam raised an eyebrow. I probably would have continued living that way too, I admitted. Just drifting through chaos as if it were a legitimate career path. But then one day, I saw her. I paused for dramatic effect, staring into the distance as if auditioning for a basic cable romance drama. She wasn't my wife back then, of course, I clarified. Just this woman who entered the same gas station where I was buying energy drinks and lottery tickets. Real classy setting. But something about her laughter, her eyes, the fact that she didn't immediately mace me. Something within me shifted. Sam actually looked surprised. Honestly, same here. I just wanted a fresh start. I told him. I wanted to be a better person, wanted to have, I don't know, a life with her, a clean one, with taxes and furniture and arguments about curtains. I took a sip, then shook my head. I won't delve into my love story right now, I said, waving a hand dismissively. Because frankly, it all feels artificial at this point, like I hallucinated the entire romance and was tricked into a 6-year fever dream sponsored by Betrayal. Sam chuckled, soft but genuine. But yes, I was madly in love, utterly smitten. The kind of guy who started Googling how to fold fitted sheets just to impress her. Absolutely crazy stuff. There was a brief silence. Then I smirked. Of course, back then, everyone knew me by a different name. Sam tilted his head. What was it? I sighed, draining my drink. They called me Shadow. He blinked. Seriously? Yep. I nodded. Not because I was cool or mysterious, but because I was a walking red flag with commitment issues and a hobby of being mildly illegal. Sam burst into laughter. I shrugged. What can I say? You do enough foolish things, and your nickname stops being a joke and becomes your entire damn brand. He was still laughing when I signaled the bartender for another round, because nothing bonds two broken men faster than heartbreak, whiskey, and a ridiculous nickname from your criminally misguided past. I swirled my fresh drink, looked at Sam, who was now staring at me like I was a late-night Netflix docuseries with questionable morals, and said, So, getting back to that motel mirror moment I mentioned, I leaned in a bit, lowering my voice as if about to confess war crimes. But in reality, I'm just being dramatic because, well, that's how I cope. That was the day I decided. Nah, I'm not just going to let her cheat on me and walk away as if she merely dropped a spoon and went, Oops, my bad. Sam nodded, eyes wide now. I stayed in that dingy little motel for 3 days. I continued. 3 days of terrible instant coffee, even worse towels, and profound existential dread. And during that time, I got to work, called in every favor I was owed, pulled some strings, hired a private investigator named Mark, who dresses like he's permanently undercover at a bowling alley. Sam snorted. No way. Seriously. Mark gets the job done. I insisted. Even if he looks like his last successful case involved finding a missing sandwich. Sam laughed harder now, but I pressed on. So we dug. And surprise, surprise, the guy she was sleeping with was some divorce smooth-talker she'd met at a bar. Apparently, he charmed her over cocktails and shared sob stories about his divorce until she willingly handed over her number, as if it were a flyer for a new yoga class. I paused to sip my drink and looked at Sam. Deadpan. And what do you know? One thing led to another, and bam, they were having an affair like it was a minor side project. Sam winced. Now, I stated, holding up a finger as if presenting Exhibit A. I know what you're probably thinking. Where in the world was your wife during these 3 days, Ethan? And did she even know you knew? Exactly. Sam nodded, fully invested. Well, I said, she did call me. What did you tell her? He asked. I grinned. I told her there was an urgent work situation. A last-minute flight, I had to leave, would be back soon, blah blah blah. Classic, completely non-suspicious husband lie. Totally convincing. Delivered with Oscar-worthy conviction. He laughed, covering his face with his hands. Meanwhile, I said, I was pacing that motel room like a conspiracy theorist, using red yarn and sticky notes to meticulously map out the betrayal as if I were planning a grand heist. Sam could barely breathe from laughing now. But the crucial detail was, I said, calming slightly. She had no idea I knew, which granted me all the leverage, because when someone stabs you in the back, the best response is not to flinch. Just sit there and let them believe you're still oblivious while you're gathering all the evidence. Sam stared at me, a mixture of horror and admiration on his face. I raised my glass, to mirrors, to motel rooms, and to pretending to be on a business trip while orchestrating emotional vengeance. Cheers, buddy. He clinked his glass against mine without hesitation. 2 men, sitting in a dimly lit bar, one freshly betrayed, the other seasoned and steeped in betrayal, bonding over the absolute worst days of their lives, with sarcasm and just the right amount of petty satisfaction. I gave Sam a look, the kind you give someone just before serving them a cold plate of poetic justice, and said, So now that I knew the identity of her affair partner, the next step was abundantly clear. They both had to suffer. Sam blinked. Damn. Oh, yes? I nodded, swirling my drink like a Bond villain with a touch of personal trauma. I wasn't going to be one of those turn-the-other-cheek types. Please, I only have 2 cheeks, and neither is available for nonsense. He snorted. But to make them suffer, I needed time, meticulous planning, precision, a few supplies, and a calm demeanor, which, frankly, isn't my usual default setting. Yet, here's the thing. I also needed to return home just once, perform a little reconnaissance, act like the oblivious, devoted husband so I could buy myself more time. So you went back? Sam inquired. Oh yeah, I confirmed. After 3 days in that godforsaken motel, sleeping on what felt like a concrete slab wrapped in a curtain, I drove back as if I just completed a top-secret mission. I walked into the house with my bags slung over my shoulder, kissed her on the cheek, and announced, Honey, I'm home. Just like a sitcom husband who hadn't just uncovered betrayal through Wi-Fi and an angry private investigator named Mark. Sam chuckled. She looked at me all sweet and surprised. I continued, like, Oh, you're back already? Which roughly translates to, Crap, I hope I deleted those texts. I took a long sip of my drink and shook my head. I told her, don't get too excited. I'll only be here for a day or two. Some major client emergency. I'll have to fly out again very soon. And she believed it? Sam asked. I leaned back, smirking. Oh, she absolutely bought it. Hook, line, and holy hell, she was relieved. I could see it in her expression. She tried to conceal it, bit her lip, gave me the whole, I'll miss you so much monologue. But I could see the joy practically oozing from her pores, as if she just won a weekend getaway with her slimy affair partner. Sam burst into laughter. I mean, credit to her acting, I conceded. She even gave me that gentle hug, the kind where you pat the back as if you're genuinely feeling something. But I could tell, behind those I'll miss you eyes, a full-blown mental calendar was being updated in real time. I raised my eyebrows at Sam. That's when I knew she was ready to dive right back into her little rendezvous circus. And I was ready too. Except my version involved less kissing and more quiet destruction. Sam exhaled, a mix of laughter and shock. You're truly something else, man. I clinked my glass against his again. Nah, I'm just a reformed shadow with a decent poker face and an above-average knack for spotting liars. But thanks for noticing. I leaned back in my chair, let out a long sigh, and took a sip of my drink. Sam was already staring at me as if I were narrating a Quentin Tarantino fever dream. So, as I'd already informed her, I stated, I had to depart again for a few more days on that crucial work trip. Top secret, urgent, immensely serious matters. A completely fabricated crisis that conveniently bought me time. And you actually left? He inquired. Oh, I definitely boarded that plane, I confirmed with a grin. Straight to London, baby. I wasn't about to hang around the corner spying like a desperate sitcom husband. No, I needed luxury, distance, and a 5-star alibi. Sam raised his eyebrows. But before I departed, I added, lowering my voice as if about to reveal the Ark of the Covenant. I made certain my house was thoroughly rigged, surveillance absolutely everywhere. Audio, video, motion sensors, the whole 9 yards. My living room resembled a Marvel villain's lair, minus the grand monologue chair. Sam blinked. Seriously? Yep, every single corner. I wasn't going to miss a single whimper, whisper, or wine cork pop, I declared. So while I was relaxing in a London hotel suite, sipping whiskey I didn't need to hide from anyone, my little plan was already in motion. I leaned in closer, savoring the moment. As predicted, she called her beloved affair partner. Come over, she said. Stay the night, she said. And that fool, oh, he arrived reeking of cheap cologne and a guilty conscience. Sam swallowed. Damn. Oh, it gets even better, I said. They poured my wine. My goddamned wine, Sam. A vintage I'd been saving for a truly special occasion. Apparently, she thought fooling around behind my back qualified. He let out a half-shocked laugh. So they did what cheaters do, I explained with a shrug. Giggling, whispering, moaning. It was like a truly terrible amateur theatrical production. Honestly, I felt personally insulted by the complete lack of originality. I paused, eyes narrowed. The next morning, Loverboy wakes up, still groggy, probably hungover, turns to his right and bam, a pool of blood. Sam stiffened. Right beside him, I stated slowly, my wife, lifeless, not moving, blood everywhere. Not exactly the continental breakfast he was expecting. He covered his mouth in shock. So what does Genius Boy do? I continued. He panics, grabs his clothes, scrambles like a raccoon in a trash can, and bolts. But the best part? As he runs out, he completely forgets the golden rule of crime scenes. Always check your attire for bloodstains. I raised my brows dramatically. The neighbor spots him, I said. Blood all over, boxers on backward. The guy looked like a rejected extra from a low-budget slasher flick. The neighbor called the police faster than you can say. I swear I didn't do it. Sam blinked, utterly stunned. What in the world, Ethan? I shrugged. What? I asked. I stated I wanted them to suffer. I never suggested it would be subtle. Then I grinned, raised my glass again, and added, never underestimate a betrayed man with a flexible schedule and a thorough understanding of surveillance equipment. The mastermind's unfolding strategy. Sam just sat there, eyes wide, jaw practically on the sticky floor, as if he'd accidentally wandered into the wrong bar and found himself trapped in a live crime confessional. I took another casual sip of my drink and continued, as if I were merely recalling an odd vacation. So while I'm in London, right? Just minding my own business, sipping overpriced tea, and pretending to care about museums, my phone rings. I held up an imaginary phone and slipped into character. It's my neighbor, a truly nosy individual who speaks like he narrates old detective novels. He says, Ethan, some half-naked man just bolted out of your house and sped off in a car like he left the oven on. I've already alerted the police. Something is definitely amiss. I nodded solemnly, reenacting my own reaction, and I said, "Oh no, let me try calling Laura." Then I dramatically hung up as if I were about to save the day, when in reality, I was just covering my tracks for the official statement later. Sam's face was frozen somewhere between horrified and mildly terrified. "So I call her," I said, waving my hand once, twice, a dozen times. Nothing. Not even a voicemail, just chilling silence. But hey, I had to try, right? A paper trail, the classic innocent husband maneuver. He stared. I kept going. Fast forward. I return home, and surprise, surprise, I'm hit with the news. Tragic. Absolutely devastating. My wife found dead in her own home. Police everywhere. Tape across the door. Neighbors looking at me as if I'm about to snap and join a cult. I shrug. But of course, I already knew the entire story. I had the deluxe spoiler package. Thanks for listening. This story isn't over yet, and things are about to get even more intense. Stay tuned for the next part to see what happens next.